This is Harry Potter's friend, Hagrid, and I am here today as a special guest speaker for your professor who has decided to take a stroll in my woods today, my forest. I told him to be careful. A lot of magical, sometimes dangerous creatures in there. He said not to worry, he's a bear. I'm a little bit concerned about any muggle who says he's a bear. All right. So, what are we going to do today? We are going to learn about rushing toward your fear. Yep, that's me, Professor Hagrid. And I was a student at Hogwarts, as you know, and of course that's me looking there. Very handsome young fellow, I might say. All right. And during my student years, I had this chance to do a summer internship of sorts as a cadet aboard a sailing ship, the HMS Beagle. Yes. And after I volunteered to do that, and signed up for it, I found out something I could not believe. I found out that every cadet on that ship had to go aloft and handle the sails and climb the rigging. The only problem with that is I'm deathly afraid of heights. Deathly afraid of heights. So about a week later after I learned this, I was sitting around and there was a petty officer from the ship who had come to teach us how to tie knots. And I was sitting around in a group of fellow students there at Hogwarts and learning how to tie a ship sink knot. And I looked at him and I asked him, "What's it like going aloft on the Beagle?" And he thought for a minute. He looked at me and he said, "Rush toward your fear." And that's all he said. So sure enough, a couple weeks later, my friends and I arrived at the ship. My friends took off for the local pub because we were still in port, had the evening off. But I went on deck instead of going straight to the pub. Not that I didn't go there later. But I asked the officer on deck, "Permission to go aloft, sir?" And he said, "Absolutely, Cadet Hagrid. Go ahead and start climbing." So up the halyards, up the rope ladder I went, got to the first platform and sat down, thinking to myself, pretty proud of myself, made it this far. Officer on deck shouts up, "Hagrid, go up to the second platform." So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'll stand, continue to climb up the rope ladder to the second platform, get up there, stand on the second platform. Whew, hundreds of feet off the deck. Oh, I made it. Officer on deck shouts up, "Hagrid, touch the commissioning pennant." Well, in the mainmast, the commissioning pennant is the flag at the very top of the mainmast. So again, I start climbing up the rope ladder. And when you get up there, the rope ladder gets really thin. And Hagrid's big feet, I actually had to turn them sideways to keep climbing, to fit them in that rope ladder. But sure enough, I was able to do that and came down and went out and about on the yardarms. On the yardarms, there's just one rope that hangs beneath each yardarm that you stand on. And you hold on to some brackets that are on the yardarm as you unfurl the sails or furl them in, basically working on the sails there. Only when you get to where you're going, that's the only time you clip in with a safety belt. So I was known as a rigging rat after that. It wasn't that I wasn't afraid to go aloft. I remember sometimes getting ready to go aloft where I still had fears, but I knew that I could overcome that fear. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I felt going aloft and being so high up. A year later, during the summer cruise to the American colonies and then back to England, all right, about somewhere south of Bermuda, and I was on the ship's wheel. I knew the captain by this time, he knew me. There were actually 4 of us on the wheel. These old sailing ships don't have power steering, and there was a lot of wind. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. We were in the middle of what the captain called a significant low pressure area. Everybody else on the ship called it a hurricane. Right? So we were there. The top 2 sails on each mast had been furled before, because when there's a lot of wind, you don't want too much pressure on the mast. It could snap the mast. But unfortunately, one of the top sails came unfurled, broke through its grommets, and it was flapping in the wind, a very dangerous situation that could have caused the yard arm to detach from the mast, come down through the ship, and sank the ship. So the captain, being the wise muggle that he is, kind of okay looking as well, for you ladies. All right. He turned to the most experienced person on the ship, a petty officer, and sent him aloft to furl in the sail, because the ship was going back and forth. Waves were crashing over. The ship was going down and back, this way and that way. Huge shifts. Petty officer got up there, started to work. Then he signaled down, because you couldn't hear anything. He signaled down that he needed more line. And the captain looked over at me and said, "Hagrid, you want to go aloft?" Well, when the captain asks you something like that, is it a request? Is it an order? Well, who knows? I said, "Absolutely, Captain, sure." So I went down to the boatswain's locker, got a big hunk of line, wrapped it around my shoulders, came back on deck, and started climbing up the rigging in this massively bad seas. And as I'm climbing, sometimes the ship is keeled over one way and I'm kind of climbing like this. And other times I'm backwards like this, way backwards, and I'm just holding on, climbing, and I get to the first platform and I'm thinking to myself, "Ooh, I shouldn't have said it was okay for me to go aloft." Yeah, but I conquered my fear. I kept on climbing. Yep. And at one point I said, "What am I doing here?" Because the waves are crashing, 2 o'clock in the morning, middle of the hurricane, going aloft in a ship that's going back and forth. And the higher I go, the more I'm going back and forth with the ship. And things are crashing, but I finally get up to there. Of course, this might be a little bit of an exaggeration in terms of what the ship looked like at that point. But I get up there and I step out on that line and I look to the right, and there's the petty officer, the same petty officer who a year before said, "Rush toward your fear." I'm still thinking to myself, I'd rather be back in my cabin. Should not have said that, should not have said that. All right. But was able to get up there, help him furl the sails, wrap the line around the sails. After about 30, 45 minutes, we came down, fairly exhausted, I might say. And the captain said, "I'm a little fearful that the foremast sails will go out of their grommets, so please go on the foremast." He didn't say please. He said, "Go up to the foremast and tie some extra line around those sails." So we did that. I would have never had that experience, which was a fantastic experience that I can now tell you about, if I had not rushed toward my fear on that very first day that I got on the ship. Rush toward your fear, for life is great on the other side. What are the 3 biggest fears in life? Put that in the chat room. What is you think the 3 greatest fears in life are? Let's see what answers we come up with. Death. Death is number 3. Yes. The dark. Did not make the top 10 list, top 3 list, but part of part 3. Heights, yes, my fear. Spiders, Loneliness, oh wow, yes, but not the top three. Failure, a little bit too general. Not finding happiness, big fear, not top three. Oh, snakes. Ooh. Being judged by others, no money. Yeah, okay. How about this? Public speaking, the number one fear in life in surveys of individuals. Meeting somebody new. And as somebody said, basically those come out to being judged by others. I was not a graduate of Hogwarts, as you know. I was elevated out of Hogwarts, we might say. But I was working, and I had a friend who had graduated from Hogwarts, and we met at the pub. This is shortly after I began working. Having lunch with him, fellow wizard. Now, of course, it wasn't with Harry, but we had kind of the same type of food, the same amount of food on the table before us. We were at the Potions and Elixirs pub. And I asked my friend, who was very outgoing, I was not. Throughout Hogwarts, if I was asked to speak up in a class, if I was asked to wave my wand, to demonstrate a potion, it was the worst thing that could happen to me on that day. And if a girl talked to me when I was at Hogwarts, oh my gosh, it was like blah, 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 blah. That was my answer. Yeah. So I asked my friend, how do you do it? He was very outgoing. He could strike up a conversation with anybody, learn about them. Very popular type of fellow. I said, I don't understand how you make so many friends like you do and have these conversations with people you don't even know. And he said, watch this. And he stood up on his chair in the restaurant and he said to everybody there, shouted out loud, I love all of you very much. And then he sat down. A lot of people in the restaurant applauded. Some cheered. Others did not. In fact, there was a particular group in the corner, a mother, a father, a couple of teenagers, and they looked at us and they were sneering, and it was like, oh, we can't believe they did that, interfering with their lunch, all that stuff. Of course, me, I'm kind of shrinking down under the table thinking, I don't know this muggle. Actually, he was a wizard, but to me, he was kind of dorky at the time. I shouldn't have said that. Should not have said that. Well, anyway, my friend said, look at that family over there. They are no longer part of my universe. They are judging me unfairly based on one thing. People who judge me, people who snicker at me, people who don't like me for some reason, they are no longer part of my universe. There are plenty of people that will like me for who I am. And who am I? I am now an accomplished public speaker. I go around the world talking to groups of 30, 100, sometimes over 1,000 people. Of course, I am now a professor of care of magical creatures, thanks to my good friend, Professor Dumbledore. Okay. And what about you? What do you fear? Maybe what you fear most is actually fear itself. Or as some of you have already stated, you fear the judgments of others. Yes. You fear what they're going to say. And this is in our communities today, where you're on social media, you're commenting on other people, you're posting things that you've done, people are commenting on you or not commenting enough. An indication of your popularity might be, how many friends do you have on Facebook? And are people actually commenting on your post? You are living your life in fear of the judgments of others. For my own sake, here I am dragging a Christmas tree across the yard. All right, I know that there are some students here at Hogwarts looking down at me and thinking, poor Hagrid, out in the snow, hard labor, wouldn't want it to be him. But I gotta tell you, I want to be me. I'm good with being me. And those students who are judging me unfairly no longer need to be part of my universe unless I want to let them in later. There are plenty of students who will respect me for who I am, who will like me for who I am. So, to be unafraid of the judgment of others is the greatest freedom you can have. All you have to do is say, I'm no longer going to live my life in fear of the judgment of others. I will be who I am. I am not going to try to change who I am just to become more popular. So live life large. Say yes to opportunities that come up that might scare you. Yes to invitations to go out and do things. Make mistakes. Life is about making mistakes. Life is hard. You can't be perfect all the time. You can't do everything perfectly all the time. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes socially. It's okay to do that. Don't live a life of fear. Rush toward your fears, overcome them, never fear the judgments of others. Now, with that, I thank you. And your professor wanted me to cover another subject today. So Hagrid's getting a little old. He's got to put his glasses on here. All right. So we'll move this off to the side.